Jackson Reed had traveled to many planets in his life, but none had felt as foreign as Thalora. The bustling city around him was filled with different alien species, all moving in different directions, speaking languages Jackson barely understood. The air was thick with the smell of exotic spices, and neon lights flickered above strange stalls selling all sorts of items. The technology here was advanced, yet there was a strange, ancient feel to the place, as though time moved differently. Jackson was a human contractor, sent to Thalora to oversee a trade agreement between Earth and the planet's dominant species, the Apharians. They were an advanced race, known for their beauty, strength, and secretive nature. Jackson had read all about them in his briefing, but he never expected to be swept into the politics of their world. He was on his way to a formal meeting with the Apharian nobles when he received an unexpected message, an invitation from none other than Queen Lyrixa, the ruler of Thalora. It was unusual for someone of her status to meet with outsiders, especially humans, but Jackson's curiosity got the better of him. He had nothing to lose. The palace was like nothing Jackson had ever seen. Its towering spires stretched into the sky, gleaming with light. The architecture was sleek and elegant, combining high-tech materials with organic curves that seemed to pulse with life. The palace was massive, its halls filled with alien servants and noble families, all moving with purpose and grace. Jackson followed the guards through the grand corridors, trying to keep up with the pace. His mind raced with questions. Why had Queen Lyrixa summoned him? He had no idea what she wanted, but he could tell it was not just about trade. When they arrived at the throne room, the doors opened to reveal the queen sitting on a majestic throne. Queen Lyrixa was a striking sight, tall, graceful, and commanding. Her long, silver hair shimmered in the light, and her violet eyes locked onto Jackson as he stepped forward. She radiated authority, but there was something else there, something softer, hidden beneath the surface. Jackson Reed, I presume. Her voice was smooth, almost musical, but with an edge that demanded respect. Yes, Your Majesty, Jackson replied, bowing slightly, unsure of what to expect. Queen Lyrixa's eyes studied him for a long moment before she spoke again. I've heard much about Earth's diplomats, she said, but you are not here for just a simple trade agreement, are you? Jackson stood up straight, now more curious than ever. I came to represent Earth's interests, Your Majesty, but if there is something more, I'm happy to listen. The Queen smiled, but it wasn't a warm smile. It was calculated, like someone who knew exactly what they wanted. Indeed, she said, leaning forward, I have an offer for you, Jackson Reed. An offer that will change your life. Jackson raised an eyebrow. He wasn't sure what to expect, but he certainly wasn't prepared for the words that followed. I offer you a contract, she said, her tone serious. A contract that will bind you to me. You will be my partner, and in return, you will be given the resources, power, and protection of the Apharian Empire. You will become my alien bride. Jackson blinked, his mind struggling to comprehend what she had just said. Partner. He repeated, unsure if he had heard her correctly. You mean marriage? Queen Lyrixa nodded slowly. Yes, marriage, in a sense, but it is also a political contract, a binding agreement between our two worlds. Jackson felt the room spin. He had come here to negotiate trade deals, not to become someone's partner in a royal contract. I don't. Before he could finish, Queen Lyrixa cut him off. You may not understand now, but you will. This contract will ensure the future of both our peoples. You will serve me, Jackson. You will be my equal, my partner in every way. Jackson stood frozen, processing Queen Lyrixa's words. Her offer felt surreal, like something out of a dream. He had come to Thalora to discuss trade deals and diplomacy, but now he was being asked to enter into a contract that was much more personal and political than he could ever have imagined. You're asking me to marry you? Jackson asked, still unsure if he had heard her correctly. The words felt strange on his tongue. Queen Lyrixa's eyes locked onto his, her gaze unwavering. It is not just marriage in the traditional sense, Jackson. This contract is a bond that ties us together politically and personally. You will become my partner in every way that matters. We will rule together, ensuring the future of both our people." Jackson took a deep breath, trying to steady his racing thoughts. He hadn't prepared for this. He had spent his career negotiating treaties, but none of them had involved a royal contract or an arranged marriage. His mind raced as he thought of the implications. "But why me?" he asked, still trying to make sense of it all. "I'm just a human diplomat. I have no ties to your world, no political influence. Why would you choose me?" Queen Lyrix's lips curved into a small smile, though it was more calculated than warm. "That is exactly why. You are an outsider, someone not bound by the politics of my people. The factions that oppose me want to weaken my rule, but an alliance with a human will send a powerful message. Earth's influence, combined with the strength of my throne, will secure the future of my reign." Jackson frowned, still not fully understanding. "So this is about power, about politics, not anything else?" Lyrixa nodded slowly. "Yes, but it is also personal. We will forge a bond through this contract. A bond that goes beyond simple politics. I need someone I can trust, someone who can stand with me, not just as a ruler, but as an equal." Jackson felt a knot form in his stomach. He could feel the weight of her words, but he still wasn't sure how to respond. This was so far outside anything he had experienced. He had dealt with politics, trade negotiations, even cultural differences, but he had never been asked to form a partnership this way, especially not one so personal. "Do you really want this?" Jackson asked, his voice quieter. "I mean, you're asking me to enter into something that's not just a political contract, but a marriage. Don't you want someone who shares your world? Someone who truly understands your people, your customs?" Lyrixa took a step closer to him, her presence commanding yet oddly calming. "I have had many suitors, Jackson," she said softly. "Many who would have been eager to take my hand for the power it offers, but none who could understand the weight of leadership as you can. You, a human, come from a world that values diplomacy, negotiation, cooperation. You have fought for your people's survival in ways that are rare, even among my own kind." Jackson looked into her eyes, and for a brief moment, he saw something there that wasn't just the calculating gaze of a ruler. He saw loneliness. He saw the burden of leadership, the same struggles he had faced in his own career, decisions that affected not just him, but entire civilizations. "I still don't understand," Jackson admitted, feeling the weight of his uncertainty. "Why choose me? You have a whole empire, powerful allies. Why would you need a human to fill this role?" Lyrix's expression softened. "Because I trust you. I know that, as strange as this may sound, you can help me lead. And in return, you will be rewarded beyond what you can imagine. You will share the throne with me, with all the privileges and responsibilities that come with it. You will become my equal." Jackson was silent for a long moment, trying to understand what she was offering, and what it would mean for his future. He was being asked to give up everything he knew for a life that was as alien to him as the stars themselves. Finally, he spoke. "If I agree to this contract, what happens next?" Lyrix's eyes lit up with something akin to determination. "You will come with me to my people. We will face the challenges together. This kingdom will either be united under our rule, or it will fall. Your role will be as important as mine, Jackson. We will rise or fall together." Jackson could feel the enormity of her words. Everything had changed. He wasn't just a diplomat anymore. He was being asked to take on a new identity, to become something more than he had ever been. A partner to an alien queen. A ruler in a world that wasn't his own. He looked at her, seeing not just the queen, but the woman who was offering him the chance to change everything. "I'll do it," Jackson said, his voice firm. "I'll stand by you. Together, we'll see this through." Lyrixa smiled, a genuine, warm smile this time. "Then it's settled. Our bond is formed, Jackson Reed. welcome to the throne." Jackson sat in the grand chambers of the Apharian palace, his mind racing. The weight of his decision was starting to sink in. The contract that bound him to Queen Lyrixa was more than just political. It was a full-fledged alliance between Earth and the Altharian Empire. But it was also personal. He was now her partner, both in ruling the empire and in everything that came with it. As he looked around the lavish room, filled with shimmering fabrics, high-tech furniture, and alien artifacts, Jackson couldn't help but feel the immensity of the change. One moment, he was just another diplomat sent to represent Earth. The next, he was bound to an alien queen in a contract that would determine the future of both their worlds. Lyrixa, who had been standing near the large window, turned to face him. Her silver eyes studied him closely, but there was a softness there now, a warmth that hadn't been present when they first met. She had always carried herself with grace and strength, but now, with Jackson at her side, there was a new kind of trust between them. "You're quiet, Jackson," she said, her voice smooth and calming. "I can see that this is a lot for you to process." Jackson nodded slowly. "It is, but I'm here now. We've made this commitment. I'll keep my word." Lyrix's lips curved into a small smile, and she walked toward him. "I'm glad to hear that. The next step is crucial. We need to show my people that this contract is more than just politics. It's about unity, trust, and strength. We will stand together, and together we will lead." Jackson had no idea what the future would hold, but one thing was certain: he was no longer just a bystander. He had become part of a larger, more complex world. And with Lyrixa by his side, he would need to prove himself not only to her, but to an entire empire. "Where do we begin?" he asked, looking her in the eyes. Lyrixa gave a decisive nod. "We begin by meeting with the Council of Nobles. They're the ones who will test us, who will decide if they accept our bond or challenge it. Some of them will be supportive, but others—" Her voice trailed off, and Jackson could see the concern flicker in her eyes. "There will be those who do not want to see this alliance succeed, and they will try everything to weaken our rule." Jackson felt a twinge of worry. The Apharian nobles were not to be taken lightly. They were powerful, influential, and many had a strong desire to see themselves in control, not to serve a queen, let alone the human partner. But he couldn't let doubt cloud his judgment now. He had made this decision, and he needed to stand by it. "We'll face them together," Jackson said with determination. "I'm not backing down, Lyrixa. I'm with you." Her eyes softened, and she placed a hand on his arm. "I knew I could count on you, Jackson. Together, we will prove that this bond is real, that we are more than just a political arrangement." As they prepared to meet with the council, Jackson realized that this was more than just a test of his ability to navigate politics. It was a test of trust, of loyalty, and of the bond that they had started to build. The challenges ahead would be difficult, but if they stood united, they could overcome them. Jackson followed Lyrixa through the grand palace halls, the anticipation growing with each step. The Council of Nobles awaited them, and the future of both their worlds depended on what would happen next. As they reached the council chamber, Jackson took a deep breath, steeling himself for what was to come. He wasn't just here to represent Earth anymore. He was here to represent their future, his, Lyrixa's, and the entire Apharian Empire. Lyrixa turned to him, her expression serious. "Are you ready?" Jackson nodded, his voice steady. "Let's do this." Together, they entered the council chamber, ready to face whatever challenges awaited them. They had made their choice, and now they would prove that their bond was unbreakable. Jackson followed Queen Lyrixa through the grand doors of the council chamber, feeling the weight of the moment pressing down on him. The room was vast and imposing, with high vaulted ceilings and walls covered in intricate carvings. At the far end of the room, a long, polished table stretched across the center, surrounded by several of the most powerful figures in the Apharian Empire. The nobles were already seated, their eyes fixed on the queen and her human partner as they entered. The air was thick with tension, and Jackson could feel the scrutiny in the room. These were not just diplomats or allies. They were the people who held the true power in this empire, and they were not quick to accept change, especially when it came to the marriage contract between their queen and a human. Queen Lyrixa walked to the head of the table with confidence, her posture regal. Jackson stood beside her, trying to maintain the calm facade that she wore so effortlessly. He knew that the next few moments would determine everything. If they failed to gain the support of the council, it could spell disaster for their plan to unite their worlds. Lyrixa cleared her throat, drawing the attention of everyone in the room. "Noble counselors, I present to you my chosen partner, Jackson Reed. As agreed, our bond is not only a political alliance, but a union that will strengthen our empire. Together, we will rule and bring peace between our peoples." There was a moment of silence before a voice from the far end of the table spoke up, cutting through the tension like a sharp blade. A human. The voice was harsh, skeptical. The speaker, a tall Apharian with green-tinted skin and piercing amber eyes, looked at Jackson as if he were nothing more than an insect. "You expect us to accept this union? A human in our royal court. What do you bring to the table, human?" Jackson's heart raced. He had expected some opposition, but the intensity of the reaction caught him off guard. He could feel Lyrixa's presence beside him, unwavering, but he knew she was just as vulnerable as he was in this moment. He stepped forward, standing tall. "I bring loyalty, knowledge, and a desire for peace between our people," he said, his voice steady. "I may be human, but my people have a long history of working with others, overcoming differences for the greater good. I'm here to stand beside your queen, to help her lead this empire into a new age of unity." The room seemed to hold its breath. The Apharian noble, still staring at him, crossed his arms and leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowed. "Your loyalty is noted, human, but what makes you believe you are fit to lead alongside our queen? You know nothing of Apharian traditions, and your people are far removed from the ways of the galaxy." Lyrixa stepped in, her voice cutting through the growing tension. "Jackson's people may be different from ours, but they have something we do not. They have a strength in unity, a willingness to adapt, and a history of peaceful diplomacy. These qualities will help us, and together, we can build something stronger than the factions that would seek to tear us apart." The noble with the amber eyes sneered. "What you speak of, Queen Lyrixa, is idealism. The reality is that this human, no matter how noble his intentions, will never understand the complexity of ruling this empire." Jackson's patience was wearing thin, but he held his ground. "I don't need to understand everything about your culture," he said firmly. "What I understand is how to make peace and work together. I've seen empires rise and fall, and I know that the future belongs to those who embrace change, not cling to old traditions out of fear." Another noble, a tall Apharian woman with blue skin, spoke up, her voice softer but no less firm. "Perhaps there is something to what you say. The universe is changing. Perhaps this human partnership will be the start of a new era for Apharian." She looked at Lyrixa. "But we must be certain. Can we trust him, Queen Lyrixa? Can we trust this union?" Jackson could feel the weight of their gaze. The room was filled with skepticism, but also a sense of curiosity. Lyrixa placed a hand on his arm, a silent show of support. "I trust him," she said simply. "I chose him, not just for political reasons, but because he stands with me. And together, we will prove that this union is not just a contract, it is a partnership." There was a long pause before the green-skinned noble spoke again. "Very well. You have made your case, Queen Lyrixa. But understand this, we will be watching. The moment this human falters, the council will have no choice but to act." The days following the council meeting were filled with a whirlwind of activity. The initial tension had not fully settled, but Jackson and Lyrixa had proven that they could face their challenges head-on. Now, it was time to show the people of Apharian that their union was more than just political maneuvering. It had to be real, not just for the sake of the empire, but for the sake of their future together. Jackson found himself spending more time with Lyrixa, learning about her world, her culture, and the responsibilities that came with ruling the Apharian Empire. He was no longer just a bystander. He was a part of the court, and his presence was felt in every decision that was made. But with every step forward, the weight of his new role grew heavier. One evening, after a long day of meetings and strategy sessions, Jackson and Lyrixa found themselves alone in the palace gardens. The stars above the planet Thalora shone brightly, casting a soft light over the lush green surroundings. It was a peaceful place, a rare moment of quiet in a palace that never seemed to stop moving. "Are you sure this is what you want?" Jackson asked as they walked together along the winding path. The weight of his question was clear in his tone, and Lyrixa could hear the concern in his voice. They had both been through a lot already, but there was still a long way to go. Lyrixa paused, looking up at the stars. "I have never been so sure of anything, Jackson," she said quietly. "My people need change. They need a leader who understands them, but also someone who can lead them into the future. You bring a perspective that no Apharian can offer. Your world's resilience, adaptability, it's what we need." Jackson frowned slightly. "But is that enough? The people, the court, they are still watching us, and every move we make feels like a step closer to failure." Lyrixa reached out, placing a hand on his arm. "We're facing something much bigger than either of us alone. But together, we're stronger than they could ever imagine. The bond between us, it's not just about the throne, Jackson. It's about proving that two worlds can unite, that we don't have to be bound by tradition and fear. We can create something better." Jackson felt her words settle in his chest. The more time he spent with her, the more he saw the weight she carried as queen. She wasn't just ruling for herself. She was carrying the hopes of her people and the responsibility of an entire empire. And though he was still new to this world, still uncertain about the future, he knew one thing for sure: he would stand by her. They sat on a bench under the glowing light of the stars, the silence between them comfortable for the first time. Lyrix's usual regal demeanor softened, and for a moment, she wasn't the powerful queen, but a woman sharing a quiet moment with someone she trusted. "Jackson, there is one more thing we need to discuss," Lyrixa said after a while, her voice serious. "The true test of our union is not just about the court or the council. It's about the people. They must see us as more than just figurehead rulers. We need to prove that we are partners in every way, that this bond is real." Jackson met her gaze. "What do you mean? How do we prove that?" Lyrix's expression grew more intense. "We need to take a public step together, something that shows the strength of our bond. There is a ceremonial trial in my culture, a test of loyalty and trust. It is a challenge that will prove whether we are truly united. If we pass it, it will solidify our rule. If we fail, everything we've worked for could fall apart." Jackson's mind raced. He had no idea what this trial would involve, but he could see that Lyrixa was serious. The fate of their union, and possibly the future of the empire, rested on this next challenge. "Whatever it is, we'll face it together," Jackson said, his voice steady. "I'm ready." Lyrixa nodded, her eyes softening with gratitude. "I knew you would be. This will be the true test of our strength, not just as rulers, but as partners. We've already shown them we can stand together in politics. Now we must show them we stand together in everything." The stars above seemed to shine a little brighter as Jackson looked at Lyrixa. He didn't know what the future would bring, but in that moment, he knew one thing for sure. They were in this together. And together, they could face whatever challenges lay ahead. The days following their conversation in the gardens passed quickly, and the weight of the trial Lyrixa spoke of grew heavier with each passing hour. Jackson couldn't shake the thought of the upcoming challenge, the one that would decide not only their future as rulers, but the stability of the Apharian Empire itself. He wasn't sure what to expect from this trial, but one thing was clear: Lyrixa had placed her trust in him, and he wasn't about to let her down. The ceremony would take place in the Grand Arena, an ancient site that had been used for tests of leadership and power for centuries. It was a place where the strongest and most capable Etherians had proven themselves. But it wasn't just about physical strength. It was a test of unity, of how well two people could work together under pressure. Jackson could feel the weight of tradition pressing on his shoulders, and the knowledge that his success or failure could affect Lyrix's reign. Lyrixa had explained that the trial involved multiple challenges, each one designed to test different aspects of their partnership. It wasn't just about surviving the test. It was about how they performed together as a team, how they worked in harmony. The stakes were high, and the pressure on both of them was building. The night before the trial, Jackson found himself alone in his quarters, staring at the map of the arena laid out before him. He didn't know what to expect, but the uncertainty gnawed at him. He had faced challenges before, but this wasn't just about survival. This was about proving that their bond wasn't just political. It was real. A soft knock at the door pulled him from his thoughts. When he opened it, he found Lyrixa standing in the hallway, her posture regal yet soft, her expression serious. "Are you ready?" she asked, her voice steady, but he could hear the tension beneath it. Jackson smiled, trying to steady his own nerves. "I'm ready, but I'm more concerned about you. This isn't just a test of me. It's a test of us. We need to show them we're more than just an alliance." Lyrixa stepped closer, her eyes filled with a mix of gratitude and resolve. "We've already proven that we can be a strong team, Jackson, but tomorrow is different. Tomorrow, we must prove it to them, to everyone who doubts us." She reached out, taking his hand. The warmth of her touch grounded him, and he realized that despite the pressure, he wasn't alone in this. They were in this together. "You don't have to do this alone," he said, his voice firm. "I'm not just here for the trial. I'm here for you." Lyrixa's eyes softened, and for a brief moment, she allowed herself to look vulnerable. "Thank you," she whispered. "I couldn't do this without you." The next morning, they stood side by side at the entrance to the Grand Arena. The atmosphere was electric, the air thick with anticipation. Thousands of Etherians had gathered to watch the trial, their eyes fixed on the royal couple. The crowds were a mix of supporters and skeptics, each one eager to see whether their queen's human partner could live up to the expectations. As they stepped into the arena, the sun blazed overhead, casting a harsh light on the large stone pillars surrounding them. The first challenge was simple enough, an obstacle course designed to test their physical abilities. Jackson had no doubt about his own strength, but he wasn't sure how well he and Lyrixa would work together under pressure. The starting signal sounded, and they both sprang into action, moving swiftly through the course. It wasn't just about speed, it was about coordination. Jackson had to rely on Lyrixa's strength, and she, in turn, had to trust him to navigate the tricky obstacles that required a more human touch. At first, there were missteps. Jackson nearly missed a jump, and Lyrix's strength wasn't enough to clear one of the walls. But they quickly adapted. They fell into rhythm, anticipating each other's movements, helping each other when needed. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough to get them through the first challenge. As they crossed the finish line, breathless and covered in dust, the crowd erupted into applause. It was clear that the trial was only beginning, but they had passed the first test, together. "Good job," Jackson said, his voice filled with relief and pride. Lyrixa gave him a brief smile, though there was still a quiet intensity in her gaze. "Don't get too comfortable," she replied. "The next challenge is much harder." They stood together, side by side, facing the challenges ahead. Jackson knew this was only the beginning, but as they walked toward the next trial, he felt something shift between them, a deeper bond that was beginning to form. They weren't just partners in the eyes of the people, they were becoming partners in every sense of the word. And with Lyrixa by his side, Jackson felt ready for whatever the future held. The sun was beginning to set over the arena, casting a warm golden glow on the stone walls as Jackson and Lyrixa prepared for the final challenge. They had completed the obstacle course, and though it had tested them physically and mentally, there was still one more task ahead, one that would determine the true strength of their bond. The last trial was the most important. It wasn't about running through obstacles or climbing walls anymore. It was about trust, unity, and sacrifice. The challenge would test not only their physical limits but their willingness to stand by each other, no matter the cost. Jackson stood beside Lyrixa, his heart pounding in his chest. The crowd was silent now, waiting in anticipation. The cheers from earlier had died down, replaced by a tense stillness. It felt as though the entire empire was watching them, waiting to see if their bond was truly as strong as Lyrixa had promised. Lyrixa looked at him, her face unreadable, but there was something in her eyes that reassured him. She trusted him. And in that moment, Jackson realized how far they had come. They had faced challenges together, learned to work as a team, and proved their worth to the council. But this challenge would be different. They would have to rely on each other more than ever before. The final challenge is a test of trust. A voice echoed from the speakers around the arena. You must each make a sacrifice for the other. Only then will you prove the strength of your bond. Jackson's stomach tightened. Sacrifice. What did that mean? He glanced at Lyrixa, but her expression remained calm, focused. She had faced trials like this before, but this was different. They were partners now, not just rulers. The arena floor opened up beneath them, revealing a deep pit filled with strange, glowing stones. The challenge was simple but deadly. One of them had to climb down into the pit and retrieve an artifact from the bottom. The catch was that only one person could make the climb. The other would have to stay behind and trust that their partner would return safely. Jackson's mind raced. The choice seemed clear, but the stakes were higher than he had imagined. I'll go, he said, his voice steady, though his heart was anything but. Lyrixa turned to him, her eyes narrowing slightly. No, I'll go. It is my duty as queen to protect you. Jackson shook his head. You're not going alone. We're partners, remember. We face everything together. For a moment, they stood in silence, both of them weighing the situation. Finally, Lyrixa nodded. Then we both go. Together. The decision was made. They would face this challenge as a team, just as they had done with the others. Jackson took a deep breath and moved to the edge of the pit. The strange, glowing stones at the bottom seemed so far away, but the path forward was clear. He and Lyrixa would make it through, no matter the cost. The crowd held its breath as they descended together, their hands clasped tightly. The climb was difficult, but they moved in unison, trusting each other's strength. When they reached the bottom, they found the artifact. A glowing orb surrounded by shards of rock. It was more than just a physical prize. It was a symbol of their unity. Jackson reached for the orb, but before he could touch it, the ground beneath them began to tremble. A loud crack echoed through the arena, and the stones around them began to shift. The pit was collapsing. Jackson, Lyrixa cried out, her grip tightening on his arm. We need to move. Now. Jackson shouted back, his mind racing. The walls of the pit were crumbling, and they had to escape before it was too late. Together, they climbed back up, the debris falling all around them. Jackson's arms burned from the effort, but he couldn't stop now. Lyrixa was beside him, her strength matching his own. As they reached the top, the pit behind them collapsed entirely, and the crowd erupted in applause. They had done it. Together. Jackson and Lyrixa stood at the top of the arena, panting, covered in dust but victorious. The orb was safely in Jackson's hands, a symbol of their strength and their trust in one another. The crowd's cheers filled the air, and for the first time, Jackson truly felt like he was part of something bigger than himself. Lyrixa turned to him, her face softening with a smile. We did it, she said, her voice filled with pride. We proved that we are not just partners in politics. We are partners in everything." Jackson smiled back, his heart light. Together. The bond between them had been tested, and it had held strong. They had faced the trial, overcome the challenges, and emerged stronger than ever. Now they could truly lead, not just as rulers, but as equals, ready to face the future together.